What is Myths and Fables? It is a middle grade book, because it's not a novel, it is an assembly of short stories. It is an ensemble of short stories. And you're talking to a guy who really likes the spiritual, weird, in-universe kind of blurring of the lines in between canon and in-universe legends. And keep in mind, to my understanding, basically it is canon that characters within the universe tell these stories to each other. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they actually happened in universe. Characters tell each other this, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it actually happens. In a lot of ways, there's a lot of similarities in between Myths and Fables and Legends of Luke Skywalker. Legends of Luke Skywalker was a good book. Don't get me wrong, Ken Liu did a really good job of it. I think that's his name. Yes, it's Ken Liu, because I was worried that I was mixing him up with U.S. Senator Ted Lieu. Anyways, I did really enjoy Legends of Luke Skywalker. There was one particular story, Lugubrious Moat, that I don't like to talk about, but I did really enjoy that blurring of the canon. Did this actually happen? There are strong hints in Myths and Fables about, like, the very first story in the book. It's very clearly hinting that one of the characters could be maybe this one. There is one very overt one where, yes, okay, they mention a character, they mention what happens and where it happens and everything like that. At first I was kind of like, it's a little bit too close to the truth and da-da-da. And then it went on to really weird esoteric stuff like Vengeful Waves, and I think that's the name of it. Yes, Vengeful Waves. It's almost biblical in the way that the story is told, and you have no idea what the time period is. We just know that it takes place on a planet that we've heard, never seen, but we've heard of. And it's a good book. Like, I know for the most part, I enjoy most books that I review here on YouTube, at least. For example, that's why I'm not reviewing Throne Treason, at least here on YouTube. Stay tuned for that. But because I prefer to talk about things that I enjoy. I know that's a strangeness in Star Wars YouTube land, but it's just fun. It's fun for me to see it as a tale within the world. That's one reason why the Darth Plagueis thing, which, yeah, okay, it's a meme, but the fact that there is a legend that exists inside of the Star Wars universe. So people inside of Star Wars universe believe that this legend could be true, or that there is half-truths to it, provides validity and more depth to the world. It provides the feeling that these are not just characters within a story, they are people living within a world. And every single one of these stories was engaging to me. And in particular, I'm just looking through my notes that I took on my phone. In particular, James Monroe Englehart, I think, who was the guy that narrated the audiobook for this. Yes, the audiobook is only like 2 hours and 42 minutes or something like that. It doesn't matter. Spend the money. Really. I'm not sure how much it is on Audible because I usually just use credits straight up because for the most part that's always going to be cheaper. But the hardcover copy is only like 13 bucks I think right now. At least that's what I paid for it on Amazon. I think if I bought it at Barnes & Noble it was like 17 bucks. It's not a full price novel. It's not like a $35, $40 novel. It's meant to be a middle grade book. Anyways, the narration for the audio version of Myths and Fables legitimately had me tearing up in the first minute and a half. because it tapped into the idea of your dad tucking you in with a bedtime story. Really. The way that the narrator read these books, it felt like one of your parents telling you a bedtime story, telling you a bedtime fairy tale. And one of the big allures for Star Wars, and for me, and what seems to be a big allure for all of Star Wars to a lot of people, is plain and simply that you're kind of chasing that 8-year-old you again. You know, you saw a Star Wars movie when you were 6 or 7 or 8 or 12 or whatever, and it grabbed a hold of you. And you're always kind of chasing that as an adult Star Wars fan. And for me, at least, both George Mann's writing is incredible for that, and the narration for the audiobook by James Monroe Englehart. It's L-G-I-E Hart. It's perfect for that, for me at least. It does put me back into the idea of sitting back and just enjoying a story. I don't need to worry about whether or not it's true or whether or not it's canon or how does it connect to the thing over there or anything like that. It's just they're just good stories. They're just stories with a real meaning behind each one. Each one sort of has the same sort of moral at the end of it, you know, societal greed versus personal greed, and the importance of a droid, and the use of power through responsible use of power, and the craving, a warning against the craving of power. Each of these has that very fairy tale-y thing, like each of the or each of the trilogies kind of do in the films. The moral of the story of the prequel trilogy, to me, is attachment is important, but what's more important is empathy and the ability to let go. The ability to trust people around you to take care of both themselves and you. The sequel trilogy, or the original trilogy, is, in my opinion, the moral of the story there is you need to open your heart to even things that appear purely evil, because it's more righteous to allow yourself to be vulnerable that way than it is to just immediately lash out at absolutely everything, because that's what Luke does in Empire. He charges headlong at Vader and gets the crap kicked out of him. Then he refuses to fight Vader, except for his minor moment of weakness. And because he refuses to fight Vader, and because he trusts in his father, the Anakin deep within inside that horrific metal suit, Anakin returns to the Jedi returns in order to save his son. That love is important. And in my opinion, I think the sequel trilogy, the moral of the story of the sequel trilogy, keep in mind we don't have the ending yet, so I'm just taking a wild shot in the dark, but I think that the moral of the story of the sequel trilogy is that you don't choose the light because it wins, you choose the light because it's the light. The fight against evil is never over. And yes, there are respites, but there's never an ending. There's always a new threat. We'll just take American history, for example. Slavery and the Civil War. And then there was the women's suffrage movement and women gaining the right to vote in the 1910s and 20s. And then there was World War II, and then there was the Civil Rights Movement, and then there was the LGBTQ rights movement that still kind of going on. Started way back in the 80s and it's still kind of going. And I think that that's the moral of the story that they're aiming for with the sequel trilogy. And each and every single one of the short stories in Myths and Fables does exactly that. It tells you a new story. It's an absolutely perfect novel to pick up if you have like an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old kid and you just want to read it to them. You're teaching your kid how to read or anything like that. that is exactly what you need. I would highly recommend this book. And even if you're a childless adult, who cares? It's still a fun read. It's like $15-ish on average, whether it be the Audible version or the print version. It's worth the money. I really can't recommend it enough if you're like me and you really enjoy non-canon material or canon ambiguous material. Whether or not this actually happened or didn't happen or da-da-da-da-da-da. If you like those borderlines, I can't recommend this book enough. Anyways, if you guys read this book, what'd you think about it? Let me know down in the comments down below. We'll have a conversation about it down there. And as always, may the force be with you guys. Take care.